All right, Kevin, how was the flight?
The flight was amazing. It was amazing.
Wow, you like that?
I did like it.
Yeah, we did a little circle here. We're at Redbird. First time I've been here. Yeah, I had to circle a little bit before we came in. It was a really short flight from Rockwall, right? Yeah. Yeah, real close. So we're gonna go in here at Delta Charlie's, check this place out, maybe have a little to eat and continue the conversation. Sound good?
I'm looking forward to it.
Right, dude. About that flight.
Yeah. Crazy.
Crazy.
Man, who knew?
We didn't even do any loops or anything.
Nothing. Yeah.
Appreciate it, of course.
It's what, you know, when you're a kid and you go to a buffet, your parents always tell you your eyes are bigger than your stomach or whatever,
Yeah.
you know? It's like, oh yeah, no, man, I want to do some cool stuff. And now you're like, I just want to make it home without getting sick.
I know you're looking a little green over there.
Golly.
With the ginger beer's helping, hopefully.
Yeah.
Eventually, take
Maybe.
your mind off
We'll
the fact
see,
that you're
man.
sick.
I know.
I'm a little nervous about the ride home.
Wow. I know. I mean, how embarrassing is that going to be if you have to get the barf bag out just for the ride
I
home?
think it'd make really good footage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it'd be really good on camera.
Yeah, I bet.
So you had some questions for me, and I can't remember what they were.
I did, yeah. I was asking just a little bit about, you know, DKB. What led you to
Yeah.
DKB and getting started? You talked about your time at Perot and Dell, and just there needing to be a better way.
Yeah. I think while we were there, you know, I was leading implementation of EHR, electronic medical records, health records, and it was really one of those deals where it was like, we are moving at such breakneck speed. We ended up having 150 physician offices come online, moving 700 providers from paper to EHR. And it was like, man, if you are going to move this quickly, you're going to have standards. You're introducing a lot of technology and rocking the world of these clinicians and doctors and office staff. And like the only way to do that and do it well without just death by 1,000 cuts, IT, you know, to where IT is always an interruption and it's getting in the way of patient care, it's getting in the way of them doing their jobs, is to put a lot of standards in place and reduce the number of choices and really dial in on that configuration management to where things are configured the same way across the board. And that really, seeing that and seeing how we were able to control the volume of tickets by putting standards in and that kind of becoming the lever to eliminate those issues, it was just sort of a lightning bulb, like, why doesn't all IT work this way? It should. Yeah. We shouldn't just measure success based on SLAs or how fast you fix a problem. That's important, but what happens when there are more tickets? Well, then you have to have more people, and more people and more tickets isn't really good for your business, and it's definitely not good for people that are trying to deliver patient care to always be interrupted by IT issues. So I found that and thought, you know, we can build a company on this, and that's what we did. And then security really came along hot and heavy not long after that, about 10 years ago, and certainly ramped up in the past couple of years, as I'm sure you've seen. And so we already had that base and that philosophy of security first, but balanced with the productivity of end users, and it just worked out, and we just ended up in the right place at the right time, really, with our philosophy on technology.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about you? Like, how? And you're in sales, and you're in client relationship, and like, how did you get started?
Yeah, I got started in technology over 20 years ago as an inside seller, working for a very large telecommunications company, and did that job for a year and then moved into an outside selling role and eventually moved into a sales engineering role, primarily on the networking side, routing and switching and firewalls and things of that nature. And really just decided that I wanted to move into a smaller context. So went to work for a smaller pure play consulting company and figured out very quickly that not that the large context versus the small context of a company is better, they're just very different. And so I learned some very valuable lessons about the power of the brand and having a more entrepreneurial spirit, and just really for me figured out that working in a smaller context was better for me. And so I worked for a couple of different companies, and a couple of years ago the previous organization I was with got acquired. And the acquiring organization offered me a role to start an office in a different city, and I really wasn't interested in relocating. And I had a friend of mine who's the CEO of a oil and gas firm, oil field services firm, I guess probably a better way to describe it. And he asked me to go to breakfast one morning, and he just said, Kevin, you've worked for some folks that have gotten their organizations acquired, and you've had small equity stake in those firms, and they're all retired, and you're still working, mm-hmm. and I really think you need to step out on your own and start an organization. And I gave it some thought, and he came back to me and said, I'll be your first client. I said, well, that's really great, but you don't even really know what I do. And he's like, well, why don't you come spend some time with me and figure out if I could use some help. And it just so happened that they could use some help. And so he was client number one and brought on a business partner because the amount of work that they needed done, number one, I wasn't gifted to do. Number two, just the sheer volume of it was more than one person could do as a consultant. And so brought on a business partner, and we started doing strategy-only work, which backed into technology projects just relatively naturally as you talk about process innovation and efficiency. Mm-hmm. That those usually lend itself to being addressed by technology things. And awesome. Thanks, man. And I lead sales and strategy for Tridius today and work with a great crew of people. Like-minded, service first.
Yeah.
Technically, I do lead the sales organization, but I really don't like that. I'm one of those people where you have that traditional view of sales as being one of those things of like, oh man, I just don't know about that, right?
Yeah.
And so we always say that we sell or we position through problem solving. We don't want to create problems that need to be solved. We want to help people identify a problem statement and really drive to the best way to do that. And we're not all things to all people, and sometimes we're a fit and sometimes we're not. We're not there to try to come in and unseat an incumbent that's already doing really great work. That makes no sense.
Right.
We're just there to try to see if we can love and lead well and serve in the areas where we have expertise.
Maybe tell us about that a little bit. There, what you see the needs are for that journey with your clients and other companies.
Yeah. No, I think that's, you're bringing up something that's a really great point that's never been more valid, at least in my experience in this industry so far. We live in a world now where we're operating at a rate of innovation we've never seen. Yeah. And the reality, this is the slowest it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
And so if we think of some of the the large technology disruptors and platform providers, folks like a Microsoft or an AWS or a Google, I read recently that if you take those three organizations, they're releasing a new feature or some new technology advancement about every 15 minutes.
Wow.
So think about that for a second. Every 15 minutes,
so
there's something new being released that's supposed to be able to help an organization, but how do you keep up with even understanding, number one, what are those features? Are they even appropriate or applicable to my environment? And what's the tangible value of them if I decide to roll them out?
How do you see metrics at work in your own company, and what's the importance of metrics that you can share with others just that are in business together?
Yeah. Well, I think for me at least, the most important thing is it's not just identifying a metric that's important, but it's, do you actually have the ability to report on it accurately and do it in a way that's efficient?
Yeah.
So I think this speaks to technology organizations specifically because we should model this behavior. But if we've got an OKR or a KPI that takes all this manual effort to get, that just seems really counterintuitive, right? It's not efficient. I love to work hard. I can't stand to work stupid.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing is not just, hey, what metrics matter, but what metrics can we actually measure and report on? And so, what data can we get? And then how do we extract that data and then visualize it or report on it in a way that people actually want to look at it and can take action on it? And so, so the first step is identifying, what metrics are important to you, and then, hey, what metrics do we actually have available to us? Because there's no sense in saying you're going to measure something if you can't really do it effectively.
With the things that you guys are doing with Dynamics and with ERP and the systems, maybe unpack that a little bit, how you help your clients, embrace metrics and data analytics and run their business on it.
Yeah, and Dynamics is certainly a really big piece of that. I think anytime somebody reaches out to us, and whether they're talking about, because sometimes it does start with like a product name, whether it's Dynamics, Dynamics, ERP, or Power BI, or business intelligence and analytics. And really for us, we always want to say, okay, time out, let's take a step back, because especially in the Dynamics, using Dynamics as an example, Dynamics engagements are going to be long engagements. There's a degree of complexity, and they're going to be expensive, not only from the actual dollar value that's invested, but the time that's going to need to be invested from the client and just the human capital perspective. But we're going to talk about data sources, workflows, things of that nature before we even get to a product name, because it doesn't make any sense to invest in that if you haven't looked at some of your business process, some of your data sources, and how you're going to actually get all of that into a tool to then extrapolate it and report on it in some fashion. Mm-hmm. And so I think oftentimes we even see fatigue around, like, you guys ask lots of questions. Why are you asking so many questions? And you're asking why and all these things. And, we just want to do this thing and buy this thing. And because there's just a lot that goes into actually making that happen. Versus just deciding on, hey, I'm going to go invest in Power BI or Tableau, and I need a data warehouse, and I need to do these things, and then I need to do elements of it, and implement Dynamics because I need a quote to order process. There's just a lot that has to go into that before you even get to insert product name here to actually make it work. And I think for us that's where we shine, is investing the time to ask those questions. And sometimes again people say, look, I feel like you guys just talk too much.
Yeah, like stop engineering and let's just build, right?
And it's wanting to, hey, look, let's
gotta have that foundation.
Let's measure twice and cut once. What drew me into this industry over 20 years ago was the fact that I enjoyed connecting with people and I enjoyed problem solving, and this was a perfect place and playground to go do that. I'm really passionate, though. If there is a technology area that I'm passionate about, it would be ubiquitous computing or pervasive computing or edge computing. Oftentimes those things are very all related in a similar fashion, but it's taking an application or technology and getting it closer to its source of data, so that you can report on it. And so, like for me, I said earlier, I've got 3 daughters. Something I love, an application I love, is Life 360.
Yeah.
Because that app will tell me not only where they are, it can tell me how fast they're driving. It can tell me if they're texting and driving. There's a very tangible benefit and value to that. That's one example of ubiquitous computing. The other one would be like a Fitbit, for example, where you're getting health data now on a device that can help you. And eventually you're going to look at the way that might eventually get communicated back to healthcare providers and things of that nature. And now what happens? And your car insurance company can now put controls that allows your insurance premium to be dictated off of your actual driving pattern. So not not the percentages of drivers in your zip code or your area, which is the way they've historically done it, but your actual driving pattern, because now there's technology that says, you know what, you obey the speed limit 83% of the time, and you use your blinker, and you do all these different things. I mean, that's data and information that's super tangible and real.
Yeah.
A lot of people love hard work, but I don't know a single person that loves to work hard and work done.
Yeah.
Right? And so, when you can get people that enjoy hard work, that are high aptitude, high capacity people, and then you can augment them with process and tools and things of that nature, I mean, the efficiency and the productivity you see is off the charts. Not to mention the fact that you've got a happier team member.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, don't get me wrong. I like hard work, too. I like to swing an axe. I like to chop some trees down.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather do it with a sharp axe
Absolutely.
than a dull axe. I'm still swinging just as hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
that's a great analogy.
using a sharper axe, man, I think there's so much opportunity in technology for businesses that's just untapped, that companies like Tridius and DKB can really help our clients with.
Oh, there's no doubt. And I think we're seeing a tangible results. I mean, look at COVID. Organizations had to look at everything. I mean, that's something that nobody could predict, that nobody saw coming, that no matter how good your contingency planning may have been, you probably didn't have pandemic on the list.
No.
And so not only are you a business that's having to think through how your customer or your client is being impacted, and the fact that you may have to shut down locations or you can't drive revenue the same, but you also have a workforce that you have to lead and manage differently, because now they're not all in the office.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing these things where, man, technology stepped in a really big way. I mean, we were concerned when COVID first started. How's that going to impact our business? We're going to slow down? And really, what we saw was an acceleration of adoption of things that we've been talking about for years, that people have just kind of said, "Oh well, there's no real reason to do this." Right? It goes back to the implication of pain, right? Like, oh, this might be painful, but we can't really we can't really quantify the pain. And then all of a sudden, it's like, wait a second, we can't really operate if we don't start to make some of these changes or do some of these things. And
we saw the same thing. COVID really sparked a lot of innovation. As painful as it was, and as rough an experience as that was, it made people look and go, well, what else is possible? How can I work differently? How can I leverage tech, data, different ways of doing business, and really get people thinking outside the box? Look, I think as we head into a slowdown in the economy, as a recession, then we're looking at the same thing. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. People are going to have to adapt. They're going to have to, and they're going to hopefully fight through it and use whatever tools are available, and make new tools where they're not available.
Absolutely. Well, that's the innovation. It helps not only because oftentimes people think process automation and process innovation in a way that reduces the human capital cost, which the human capital cost is the most significant cost for any organization typically.
Yeah.
But it's also the buyer journey is different. The customer journey is different. And so the innovation needs to impact them, because they're in a more competitive scenario with their traditional competitor that's vying for that same dollar, or for that same market share, or for that same spend. And so how do they drive engagement and do some of those things? And again, we live in a much more digital world, app-oriented, cloud-centric, software-defined space. And then on top of that, you've got to secure it, because we've already talked about the value of data and all of those things, and the fact that there are people out there looking for that. And it's really interesting to me to see how some of that's going to play out. I don't know that everybody understands that when they walk in somewhere and they opt in just because they want to get, perhaps a coupon or something from the grocery store, wherever they are, what they're actually giving, what it means when they actually are opting in.
Yeah. All right, so Kevin, you just recently went on a farm mission trip, Nigeria, I believe, right?
I did. I was in Nigeria. Yeah, I was in the city of Jos in the Plateau State. I love the Nigerian people. The mission team I went with has been going for over 20 years now. They started over 20 years ago building churches and orphanages. Don't build churches as much anymore, but huge focus on widows and orphans, evangelism into Muslim areas, clean water, and an addiction ministry there. It's the largest country by population. It also has the largest economy as well. And for the first time in its history, it's 50-50 Muslim and Christian. It's predominantly been a Muslim country, and the gospel's taken root there, and it's just incredible to see the things that are taking place.
From that, like we talked a little bit about bucket list items, and your bucket list item is not flying upside down or doing spins and spirals in a plane.
It's not.
That's unfortunate, because I was going to help you put a check mark on the bucket list here today.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, I think we did one turn and I felt like I went inverted. In fact, that might be the story I tell.
You know, if puking your guts out in a small plane is not on your bucket list, and I can't fulfill that today.
Yeah.
What's your bucket list item, Kevin?
I want to go to seminary.
It's awesome. Yeah, seminary.
I'd love to get a degree in biblical counseling. I'm looking at going to the master's college on the West Coast. There's a number of great schools in Texas, so I may end up doing something here too, but that's my bucket list.
That's it. What are the challenges that you've overcome? Obviously being an entrepreneur, growing a business, dealing with people, and living life, it's full of challenges. It's hard.
It is.
Have you overcome?
Yeah, it is. When you try to lead in a way that's really gracious, but there are still times when you find yourself having really tough conversations, and you've got to lean into and lead through those, and it can be challenging. It can be heart-wrenching sometimes, but that doesn't make them less necessary, right? As you've prayed and processed through things, once you come to what you believe is the point of clarity on what needs to be done, you have to answer the call to go and do it. For me, one of the things I'm very aware of is, Tridius has 70-ish people, and I view that as I'm responsible for 70 families.
Yeah, no, the same burden. We've got around 55 very similar sized companies, and no, you're spot on.
Yeah, and we've got people that work with us that are not of the same worldview, and belief system that we are.
Yeah,
and we love the fact that they're a part of our team and they do great work. But the reality is, when you're faith forward, you're now putting that front and center to the point that your actions could potentially turn somebody away from the gospel. I mean, you look at the number one reason why people leave the church, it's hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And so you're now putting a heightened sense of that into the workplace, and it's critically important. And for me at least, looking at the call of the Great Commission, it's awesome that I at least have an opportunity not to beat people over the head with the scriptures. Not that I don't think the scriptures are important. I mean, they breathe life into me. If I can love and serve people in a way that makes them go, man, this place is different, and why is that? And man, there's this Jesus that's the least common denominator. And, man, I can impact somebody's eternity. That's awesome.
That's awesome. I mean, that is living with mission, and that's living with a purpose. I think in business is the ultimate definition of success, right? Is if you can show the gospel to other people, and you can do great things, and you can do that through Christ who strengthens us, and man, that's the best.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I love about operating a company like we do.
I'm with you on that 100%.
Awesome. All right. Let's call that a wrap.
Let's call it a wrap for now.
There it is.
Get back in the plane so we can keep people from getting sick. I just can't believe the impact this has had on me physically. It's blowing, my mind is blown right now. I'm so discombobulated.